And this is just to amend
All this is to
7492.
amend the resolution as written.
Mr. Westcott?
I'm a no.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
No.
Mr. Gerard?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Fox here. Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
660. Okay, that fails. The amendment.
The amendment fails. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other committee reports to report on? Evelyn, any more?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Conover?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on October 8th, represented in your packets by resolutions 456 through 458 and 478 through 481. All fairly straightforward pieces of legislation. I would draw your attention to 478, which was a emergency response at Westmount that I believe Chairman Sokol will discuss. And other than that, that's my report.
Okay. Supervisor Monroe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The real property tax met on September 30th. We had discussion on a request that Supervisor Seaver had made regarding the notice of prior taxes due on tax bills. It was not really highlighted. Some people missed the fact that they owe taxes for prior years. The bill, the proposal to amend the bill, and I think everyone on the committee was satisfied with the way it was amended. I think that's a good move. There was also discussion about the filing fee for subdivision maps. We have the fee now of $50 for a 4 to 9 lot subdivision, $100 for 10 or more lots. We're authorized to charge a fee of $25 for 1 to 3 lot subdivisions, which we've never done. The proposal was to impose that fee, and the board, the committee, adopted that resolution to charge that fee for the 1 to 3 lot subdivision, $25. And there was also discussion about numerous custom reports that the department received requests to have prepared for not-for-profit fire department. It takes a considerable amount of time. The committee referred it back to real property tax to look at how often that happens, what costs are involved, and to determine whether it should be a charge for it. And then finally, I brought up something that's been brought up a number of times in the past regarding changes in state law having to do with tax foreclosure sales. In the distant past, the taxes were always you could pay on the oldest tax owed, and so you'd only be foreclosed on if you failed to pay that oldest tax. And then the law was changed to say that no, you had to pay the newest tax and pay in effect in reverse order, which I never thought was fair. We opposed it when the legislature imposed it, but it was changed. And the other thing that occurs to me is not fair is the fact that if you have multiple properties, and we have several instances of multiple properties, but we had one where there's 5 properties. And the rule is that if you have an installment agreement and you can't pay all in full, all 5 of those taxes, if you can only pay 4, that you lose all 5, which never appears to me to be fair. So we had a request from the county attorney to refer it to the treasurer to get his input, but I think it's something we want to discuss further, and I feel we should request the legislature to change that. And we do have a taxpayer that's here today that made a request to try to save his property. I think he wants to speak to the board at some point today. and that's been rejected up to this point. The Wood Park Committee, Operations and Maintenance, we talked about the Shrine Circus, which actually lost money because they had rain events, and so Mayor Blaze asked if we could reduce the fee from $3,000 for 2 days to $1,500 because they only operated 1 day. The committee passed that resolution. Mayor Blaze also has been dealing with a number of other events for next year. He's trying to line up 10 different events, and every one of them has requested fencing and a stage, which we don't have in the budget at this point. So he proposed that we seek grant funding in the next round to do both fencing and stage, permanent stage. So the committee, I believe, supports that. And then also he presented a proposal for maintenance of the Wood Park on a flat fee basis, which I think we should do, but we'll be discussing that further.
Fred, would you like to introduce Kate Fish from the...
Okay, Kate Fish, Executive Director of Adirondack North Country Association, is here, and he just came over from Washington County, made a presentation there, and wants to make a presentation here. Kate?
Thanks, Fred.
Yep.
If you could just take one of these with this wonderful picture on the front and pass it around. Yeah, so now comes the fun part of the meeting. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So I'm here to just talk very briefly and answer any questions about ANCA, Adirondack North Country Association. We very much appreciate your support over the years. It makes a big difference in terms of what we're able to do. I just want to mention that Pat Tadich has been on our board for about 5 years, a very active board member and very helpful. So I just want to go through quickly kind of what we do for Warren County. We've made a request for you to double your donation this year from $750 to $1,500. So this is not a big budget item like what you've been talking about before. But we I think, have a very real and impact on the counties that we serve. We serve 14 counties across the northern part of the state, so we're very, very networked. There are 3 ways that we work on improving our regional economies, and it's based on kind of 3 assumptions. One is sustainability, and we do that in 2 ways. We work towards improving efficiency of buildings, and I heard a discussion about, leaky buildings. It's a huge economic issue up in this part of the world. And then we also work to promote and help innovate green energy technologies. And I know that Fred certainly has been leading the way in Chester, and we feature what Chester has done in terms of the solar installations, et cetera. Fred's been a keynote speaker at our Clean Energy Conference and at other events. We also featured Fred in our North Country Regional Sustainability Plan, even though you're not technically part of the North Country per se. But we just thought that was such a great example. So sustainability is one of our 3 platforms. Second one is local economies, and we do that in 2 ways. We work very closely with local artisans across the region. We call that the invisible factory because there's a lot of manufacturing that goes on kind of behind the scenes. We do an annual Buyer Day of meeting in Saratoga Springs every year. We bring about 80 local artisans and broaden the marketplace. That event has served as a jumping off place from artisans who've been selling at farmers markets to actually building real businesses associated with that. The other area is local farming. So we do a lot of work with small farms. We help with grant applications, help to leverage the young farmers that are coming into the area in innovative ways. So a lot of it's just how do we keep local dollars circulating in the local economy. Energy and artisans and farms are one of our important parts of that. The third thing is connecting communities. We work just because we don't have county boundaries, so we can work across counties, and we work with communities in connecting and helping to enhance their visibility to tourists, to residents, et cetera. We were very instrumental with working with Warren County on the first wilderness corridor. And Pat has done a tremendous job in terms of, we partnered with Warren County in getting that as an official designated scenic byway, which then brings in all sorts of other potential revenue and value to that region. So those are kind of the three ways that we work. We've got a couple of really interesting projects coming up. We are working with a number of local arts, regional arts organizations and cultural centers, building what's called an art trail. We got funded from NISCA last year to do that, and that's drawing people who are interested in cultural and arts experiences across the entire region and highlighting the really, really cool stuff that goes on up here in the Adirondack North Country. We got a $100,000 grant last year from the state to launch a regional competitive identity project. Many of our local producers say, we cannot compete with Vermont because they've got such a strong brand. So this is to create a competitive identity for artisan products for agricultural products coming out of this region. And then we are launching a new website. It's geared towards the millennials. I mean, it's going to be responsive, whether you're on your cell phone, your iPad, your computer, whatever, that will replace the Scenic Byways website that we've managed for a number of years. And that's going to feature all of the interesting things that are going up here. It will house the art trail, et cetera. So that's Anka in a nutshell. I think I had 3 minutes. Hopefully it was within that. Any questions or comments?
Anybody?
Anybody know how old we are? We will be 60 years old in 2015. So we're one of the longest running, if not the longest running, rural economic development organization in the northern part of the state.
Very good. Thank you, Kate.
And we appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, continue with Supervisor Gerard. Did you forget anything?
Just a couple things, and Paul's going to have to help me. I was, the public hearing at the Queensbury Community Center for the environmental impacts of the airport runway extension be held, and clarify the date so I don't mess it up.
I think it's the 23rd, right?
Jeff,
The
23rd.
I wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak, but 23rd, and I believe it's at 7 o'clock. And just two other things airport related. The FAA should be responding shortly, if they haven't already, on the go-ahead for the office complex and the restaurant for Mr. Skimmerhorn. And we're hoping that we hear about the fuel farm and the grant application that we submitted for that, because they were going to prioritize that for us. So
Good.
hopefully we'll hear that 29th. Thank you.
Dan. Supervisor McDevitt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just Resolution 488, 489, and 490 all relate to college. I know Martin has done some work on all of these. The biggest one, and again, you see a number of $21 million on resolution number 2. I think it's important to point out that if the source of the funding for a Center for Healthcare Research and STEM Careers will be funded by the state, and the remaining 50% will be funded from private sources. I think also I believe our attorney has dealt with the land donation and the intricacies involved with that. Getting back to 485, I missed that one. Basically, a little bit of an easement issue as it relates to a coal frame structure on as far as requested by the Warren Washington Association for Mental Health, basically to grow vegetables in the wintertime. Just 497, just a couple of very quick issues as it relates to it. I think it's maybe important to point out that the lender is paying 0.25% of the 1.25%, and I think it's only honest to ask if we're going to eliminate annual revenue of $843,000. It'd be nice to know based on what we've heard this morning in terms of some of the expenditures, where we're going to find $843,000. Mr. Chairman, I also have some comments as they relate to the jail. I can deal with it now, or we can...
Sure.
I see Captain Gates in the audience, but I think we've heard over the last week or two some issues as it relates to correctional medical care. Correctional medical care holds over $32 million in contracts with New York State counties. It has been alleged that they've understaffed their facilities and shifted work hours from physicians and dentists to less qualified and lower wage staff, including in one case a nurse with a felony conviction. The Attorney General's investigation of CMC began as a result of a referral from the New York State Department of Correction. The Commission of Correction found significant lapses in medical care provided to 6 prisoners who died in custody between 2009 and 2012 at 5 county jails. The board also found that medical records lacked evidence of physician or psychiatric oversight and did not include required information. In addition, CMC staff dispensed medications without medical orders. I would like, at some point, our attorney to comment on a couple of issues. That being, number one, the legality of this organization to continue to operate in our jails based on New York State law as it relates to non-medical providers being in control. And the second being the monitoring effect. Apparently, it is my understanding that at some point, the Attorney General, i.e. a representative, will monitor the jails that are under investigation or have been under investigation at this point. So I thought I would just get this into the public record, since we will at some point be asked to vote on an extension. And I see Captain Gates here, and I thank him for the recent correspondence from the sheriff, which was extremely well done and gave us an opportunity to understand the fiscal pressures that he faces at our correctional facility.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to report at this point in time. I have had a number of conversations, as you might imagine, with Supervisor McDevitt about this matter. I think it's important to emphasize that the issues that CMC had, at least with the jail providing particular care, are not at all related to Warren County. Those issues are Monroe County issues and Tioga County issues, not Warren County issues. We're not experiencing those types of issues here. And as I think as we know, it's also important to point out that there is demonstrated savings that has been demonstrated. I think it's also important to point out, as far as I understand, Captain Gates can correct me if I'm wrong, is the jail is not experiencing any problems with the delivery of care to the inmates. As a matter of fact, it's my understanding that they would tell you that the care is excellent, and the inmates are being well provided for, and that it is a seamless operation. But again, I'm going to defer to Captain Gates if I have misstated anything here. With respect to the Attorney General and the CMC, here's how I look at that for you. Here's how I look at that settlement agreement for you. I think you're a beneficiary of that agreement. Warren County is one of 13 counties that contracts with CMC. We have a present contract with them. That contract is due to be extended at the end of this year. Within the confines of the settlement agreement that CMC and the Attorney General reached, there are a couple of things that I wanted to point out. Number one, that there is an independent monitor that CMC is required to retain at a substantial fee to CMC. That independent monitor is going to initially begin an audit process, and there are defined areas of audit that they must look into. It's Exhibit A to the agreement: staffing needs, medical care, things that they found at issue in Tioga and Monroe counties. But you are initially going to have that monitor right here in Warren County conducting an audit of the sheriff's jail and the activities, the medical activities within that. They're going to go back 3 months, and they have to do that soon. If they find any of those issues that are of concern, then the auditor automatically can go back as many as 2 years. Now, we don't have that track record here because CMC, we're still in our first year of contract with them. If we decide, if this board decides that you no longer want to contract with CMC, the settlement agreement with the AG gives you an automatic out. You no longer have to contract with them. No penalty to you, no penalty to them. So there is that. There is a safety valve, a check in place for Warren County. So I think you're the beneficiary of that. But I want to again emphasize that these issues were not Warren County related. They were related to other counties. CMC is going to have to restructure their organization. They have to make a fundamental change in the way that they do business. Right now, they are providing administrative functions. They're going to continue to provide administrative functions, but they're going to have to contract with a professional corporation, and that professional corporation is going to be the deliverer of the medical care. So they can continue operating, Supervisor McDevitt. They are not in any violation of law, as far as I can tell, with Warren County. We can continue to operate with them. We can continue to use them. We can continue to allow them to deliver services. They're going to make changes. They have time to make changes. And as a result of those changes, I foresee modifications to our agreement with CMC as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Again, my point is to get it in the public record so that we, as elected representatives, fully understand the serious issues involved there. Thank you.
Supervisor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, sitting here thinking that since we're on TV now, maybe we should have an intermission. It's been 2 hours. But since you don't want to call it intermission, support services met on the 1st of October. On today's agenda, there's 3 resolutions. Number 482 is approving the Warren County policy on preservation of institutional information. And essentially, if he would like, Martin can join in and fill everyone in on this. But essentially, it's retaining documents that can reasonably be anticipated could be used in litigation process. Number 483 is authorizing agreement with Needham Risk Management to serve as our consultant for our self-insured workers' comp program. It's a 3-year contract, 2015 through 2017. It starts out at $55,000 and ends up at $60,000 in the final year. There's been a good experience with Needham Risk. I'd be hard-pressed to tell you how much we've saved since then, but I know that all of our measurements are going in the right direction. Number 484 is approving revisions and amendments to the Warren County Emergency Action and Response Plan, Human Services Emergency Action Plan, the Program on Workplace Harassment, Safety and Health Program Policy, and the Incident Management Guidelines. And these are mostly minor changes. Personnel met on 10/8. There's 6 or 7 resolutions on today's agenda. 491 is authorizing termination of existing agreements with E4 Health Incorporated. That's an EAP assistance program. The reason for terminating would be lack of staff utilization. 492, I guess I'm a little confused. We rejected 492 with an amendment. How about the original? Is that still on? Still, okay. We don't want to talk anymore about 492 because we get too nervous. And 493 is amending the table of organization. Essentially, these are changes in the DA's office. No financial impact. 494 is authorizing the DA to fill a vacant position, part-time investigator, which the prior resolution referred to. 495 is authorizing dental insurance through Delta Dental to continue with the existing plan. 498 is authorizing and ratifying the health insurance for county officers, employees, and retirees. 499 is authorizing proposed local law number 6 of 2014 and authorizing a public hearing. Economic growth, while we have no resolutions, it's interesting to mention some of the things that were discussed in our last meeting. EDC has conducted a second annual planning and zoning forum. It's been attended by 70 individuals representing 18 municipals, organizations, and municipalities. They've closed on the Hacker boat parcel in Queensbury. You probably will see construction there in the early spring, or maybe some this fall. They announced that Just Beverages has announced that the new beverage company would be headquartered in the city of Glens Falls. And again, one of the measurements on the success of an economic development program is employment. The Department of Labor has announced that Warren County unemployment rate for as of August of 2014 is 4.9%, and that's a decrease from the August 2013 rate of 6%. So while economic development is a slow process, it's good to see the results. And finally, there was a presentation by Ed Bartholomew at the meeting that featured a flyover video of all of the, or some of the industrial parks. He has a video for all of them, but he selected about 5 that he showed at the meeting. But that's a real interesting tool. They utilize drones to do aerial photography, and it gives people a real good idea of what's at a park. You can get an overhead of the park, and you can see the Northway bypassing it, and so on. So it's really a good tool for park development. That's it, Chairman.
Supervisor Kenny.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Human Services met on September the 29th. Resolutions 464 through 470 come from Office of the Aging that deal with extending a lease, extending a contract, filling a couple of positions, getting authorization to submit a grant. From the Director of Employment and Training, there's a budget transfer in the amount of $48,016 to include unanticipated revenues and appropriations related to the receipt of Federal Trade Adjustment Act funding for reimbursement of costs associated with the training of 10 dislocated workers. And then from the Office of Veterans Affairs, she submitted a request to fill a part-time vacant position for typist keyboard. And that's all.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Vansel.
No report.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I have a very short report. The invasive species did meet this month. We had a final cap on the boat inspection program. We had almost 20,000 boats inspected this summer. It was very well received. Very, very, very few incidences. The boating public seems to realize the asset and value of this. A lot of them expressed interest in seeing the program expand. There are some things that we hope to do better next year, some cost-saving maneuvers, and some expansion of some of the data that we're collecting. The second thing was the clam issue. We had no clam matting program. We had one matting project in a small area up in the northern basin that was very successful. But other than that, we've done very little with the clams. As everyone knows, they had a major setback with the hard winter last year. I know none of you are hoping for a hard winter, but I am. We're kind of in a holding pattern waiting for people in the know to tell us what to do. It's a scary proposition. Little buggers reproduce like crazy, and they've had a great summer. And that's it. No resolutions today.
Supervisor Molino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The tourism did not meet in September. We have a meeting on October 30th at 10 a.m. The tourism department did some research on the information that we're collecting at the Adirondack Factory Outlet Mall, our satellite place, and we found that 19 different states signed into the book, people from different states, and 9 different countries. signed in and looked at that spot. So that's, with the feedback, it was overwhelming that customer service in the area was up where it should be and better. And the products that, as a whole, that we do here in Warren County was very satisfying. The department is planning its winter advertising. The brochures, the schedule on the event placemats have been delivered, and the 2015 travel guide should be here on October 31st. We're doing a website reorganization, and it will be done by the end of the year. And at our October 30th meeting, people like to come. Tom Connors of Ad Workshop will be there to inform the committee on all the summer advertising we did in the fall and how it worked out, and the thoughts on promoting the outlets and marketing a little bit better. That's all I have for tourism. Under the Stop DWI, there's only one resolution in your packet. It's 461. It's just to execute the DWI comprehensive plan for Warren County for 2015. DPW met. We have three resolutions, 485, 486, and 487. The first one is to authorize permission for the Warren Washington County Association to put up a metal structure for temporary on our county property right away. The other is to accept a donation for Up Beyond the Farm. And the third one is to result from Resolution 599 of 2012 to establish a capital reserve fund to fund capital improvement, authorizing transfer of the funds that are in that, and to amend the 2012 budget. On the third note, again, I will mention, I've been working on that sales tax redistribution. It's almost coming up on a year now. It's been 2 months since the chairman put a committee together. I know Bud and a few people have been highly working on it, and I think we should still look into it. Just one quick note, we might get Mr. Supervisor from Queensbury, but in the paper the other day, they have an $8.5 million budget, which they're proposing. They get $9 million in sales tax revenue. So to me, it looks like the taxpayers of Queensbury has to pay 50% of that budget. In Lake Luzerne, we have a $3,700,000 budget. We get $900,000 in sales tax revenue. We only cover that for a quarter. My taxpayers have to pay 3/4 of that budget. Thank you.
Supervisor Stroud.
No report, but we do have a $30 million budget.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver.
What did I say?
Thank you. I had the opportunity to attend the Balloon Festival, as I'm sure many of you did as volunteers. And I just wanted to thank Supervisor Gerard for putting up with me early in the morning, I guess at 3 a.m. as we were directing traffic. But I do want to thank Ross and Jeff for a very detailed tour of the airport and what all the different issues are facing the discussions that we have relating to the airport. So thank you. And, lastly, I'm not too nervous to talk about Resolution 492, but I will be brief. I would like to call your attention once again to Resolution 492, and I am requesting a roll call vote on this particular resolution. But I'll also call your attention to Resolution 457. 457 funds this temporary position in the amount of $4,173. Now, I've heard from some of you that this is only a resolution for $4,000 in a couple of months. However, this isn't just about $4,000. This is about the facts. This is not personal. The facts are that we did not afford each department head to request additional temporary help for what I believe are all equally busy and understaffed departments. The fact is that our HR department is $27,669.76 over budget, and that this $27,669.76 came from the contingency fund. The fact is that this dialogue and revisiting our local law is needed. The fact is, as a board, we have not done everything that we could have done or directed, that all options to address this backlog have been done or have been exhausted, such as a college intern or perhaps two, or directing a reallocation of resources within the HR department like we ask every other department head to do. And lastly, the fact is that this temporary position was approved for 3 months, as indicated on March 12th in committee, And then, once again, understanding that backlog, we approved it on August 6th for an additional 3 months. I hope you consider these facts as we look at voting on the resolutions 457 and 492 and recognize that this isn't just about $4,000. Thank you.
Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you stole my thunder. The fact is, with 492, there's just a point of clarification. One says $4,174, and the other one's $4,173, so we're at another buck.
Thank you.
Health Services met on September 26th. We had a very brisk agenda, but as Supervisor Conover noted earlier, we did have an emergency break in the main pipe, the water main pipe at Westmount. Roselle North actually came in with the lowest quote, which was probably half under what we estimated anyway. But this needs to be taken care of. So I ask your consideration on Resolution 478. And just a brief update, I mentioned last month that the attorneys were getting together on the verbiage with contract. They're moving ahead nicely. I think we're getting real close. So listening to Frank, we are budgeted through May, I believe, Frank?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So hopefully we could expedite this so we don't have to have future funding for the budget. So I would ask for you people to push this along as well. Thank you. That's all I have.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, I've got a few comments. I've attended a number of meetings this month, and I'm drawing some conclusions. Obviously, we face some unbelievable fiscal challenges this coming year. But before I even mention a couple things, I'd like everybody to note the review of the draft environmental assessment on the runway extension, which is going to have the county spend at least $400,000 plus legacy costs, plus, submitted by engineer Mr. Whitehead. That was put in everyone's packet, their resolution packet, so hopefully everybody will take time to read that and get maybe a little clearer understanding of really where we are on this. But just a couple of notes, and I'll keep this short, Mr. Chairman. Here's what I know. We're $350,000 under budget. Our sales revenues are short. We have significant costs coming up in the jail, probably $1 million or more. We're looking at anywhere from $8 to $13 million for another building or addition, or however we're going to configure it for the new judge. We can all agree that our county roads are in need of additional funding. I think almost everybody can agree on that. That's one thing 20 people, I think, in one room can agree on. So we're looking at trying to come up with at least $1 million or $2 million more for that. We were presented a presentation today for upgrades in our emergency communication system throughout the North Country. This is up to another $6 million addition. Granted, it can be done over time. And finally, we have, and I don't like to harp on it, but we have a very sound and very adequate airport currently. Yet we spend $855,000 a year, plus when you put in the interest on the bond, over $1 million a year. And now we're talking about spending another $400,000 plus to extend a runway that has shown no incremental additional business will result from it. So I hope we all look at the things we have in front of us, which we all can agree are very substantial financial challenges. And I hope we can look at every single budget and every single piece of the way we do business here at the county and find, maybe shift around some funds. And I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Westcott, any more? I know you held your comment.
I did. I'm going to continue to hold it.
Okay. Very good. As far as my report goes, it's been a very busy month. Highlights, I attended the Civil Service Training 101 at SUNY Adirondack. It was put on by Civil Service and Human Resource offices. Very enlightening. We had 2 presenters from the state. There were school districts, towns, villages, and the city of Glens Falls and the county represented. So it's good representation of the county. Also went through the internal audit review with the county auditors and found another favorable look at the county books. I think that'll be released shortly, or is it out?
It's not out yet, I don't think it is.
Yes.
The financial reports are out today.
The financial report is out, so, the county is still doing pretty well as far as finances go. And then, last but not least, I chaired the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Committee meeting the other day, and I'm happy to report that 9 miles of Route 8 will be paved next year, although it's in the town of Thurman. So Route 8 from, I think, Baker's Mills or from the Wells line back will be paved next year. As far as a lot of other state roads in the county, we don't see much movement. So, but that was good news because that's pretty rough over there, through there. But, and I didn't know it was in the town of Thurman until.
Learn something new all the
There
time.
isn't 9 miles of Route 8 in town. I'd be surprised if there's a mile.
It twists quite a bit. That's the crow flies
And
one.
loop to loop.
Yes, that's Thurman for you.
That's it. That's my report. County Administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I just want to follow up, there's been a couple of mentions on the runway extension and the public hearing that's coming up. I had an opportunity to meet with Jeff Tennyson and the engineers who are preparing for that evening and the presentation. The focus is around the environmental impact, or not impact, but the environmental assessment form that has been released and available for public comment. But there's also going to be a presentation to start that evening off. And from what I have heard, I think it would be very, provide some very useful information in terms of a little bit of, it's not intended to get into a total overview, but I think it'll provide some good background information, primarily focused on environmental aspects, but will provide some information on the runway extension, obviously, itself. So as supervisors, I know a number of you have expressed interest in this project, and so I'm just recommending that you may find it worthwhile attending that meeting that night. The second thing, just very briefly, I think this is a good news type of thing. Supervisor Sieber brought to my attention that she had been hearing from some folks that it was kind of hard to find our videos, both the videos on the board meetings as well as the committee meetings. So I'm happy to report that when I heard that, I got together with Mike Colvin. And when you go to the county's main webpage now, you will find right in bold how to access the county videos. And we have links that take you, there's even some little instructional things there, but there's some links that'll take you right to the committee videos as well as right to the county board videos. So hopefully everybody will find that much easier. The only other comment I will make is that we will, the plan is to totally revamp our website. But at least for now, I think we've made some good progress on that particular aspect. Hopefully, you'll find that very convenient. But here again, the other thing I would mention, if any supervisor hears of any comments or you have comments yourself that you think we could do something in the interim to make the web page better, certainly please feel free to reach out to me and I'll work on that as fast as I can with Mike. Obviously, he does all the work, or his staff does, but I usually, I coordinate it with him, and we make it a priority to improve that all the time.
County Attorney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a couple of items. Just a reminder that the auction for the 2014 tax foreclosure is tomorrow morning. It's here. Registration begins at 9 a.m. The actual auction itself is to start at 10 a.m. Late last week, we obtained our judgment and order from the Warren County Supreme Court, which authorizes a deed to be signed by our treasurer, Mike Swan, conveying full and complete title to the parcels that are remaining in the tax foreclosure proceeding to Warren County. That was done earlier this week, so procedurally, we're all ready to go for tomorrow morning. As I understand it, Mike, Lexi, correct me if I'm wrong, but there remain 35 parcels in the sale for tomorrow. 6 of those are leftovers from last year that didn't sell. I think it's just noteworthy that number of 35. It's kind of odd to be talking about this, but I'm very proud that number is 35. I think Mike and Lexi are as well. I think it shows the amount of effort that has gone into this process by all 3 departments that are involved in this, and to whittle these parcels down from where we were a couple of years ago down to 35, I think is just a testament to the hard work of these folks. And it's not an easy process. It's not a pleasant process, but it's a process nonetheless that we have to go through. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
As far as Resolution 482, That is the resolution that Supervisor Taylor mentioned regarding the policy on preservation of institutional information. Obviously, I've drafted that. Obviously, I'm asking for your support on that. If it passes today, my next step would be to talk to the county administrator about putting a discussion of that policy on the agenda of our next department head meeting and going through the policy in detail with the department heads in a similar fashion that I did at the committee level. Thank you very much.
Okay, reading of resolutions?
Communication.
Oh, communications, sorry.
Monthly report from probation, annual report from County of Warren for fiscal year ending December 31, 2013. City of Glens Falls Industrial Development Agency, notice of public hearing regarding Just Beverages LLC project and 14 Hudson LLC Park Street project.
Okay, reading of resolutions?
Resolutions 458 through 498 were mailed. Resolution 497 was amended after mailing. A motion is needed to approve this resolution as amended.
Do it now?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Dan, second by Ron. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, anybody request roll call votes or discussions on any resolutions? Supervisor Merlino.
You know, I'm just a little confused on this 492. I mean, the way I'm reading it here, this is just to extend that position for 33 days. So we're not voting on next year making it a full-time or a permanent type of position.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any discussions? And then I'll open it up to public. Supervisor Beatty?
Could we get a roll call on 477, please?
477. Any discussion from the public? Please come up, state your name for the record.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I bring your attention to Resolution 499, in particular page 5 of 20, Section 9, which is halfway down. It's basically the loopholes for all the rest of this stuff in here. It says that Sections 5, 6, 7, and 8 shall not apply with respect to the following matters, which seem to me to be rather broad. Any matter requiring the exercise of discretion that directly affects any of the following groups of people or lawful class of such groups. All municipal officers or employees, all residents or taxpayers of the municipality or an area of the municipality, or the general public. I think if you just look at this, you know, maybe Mr. Offerdu can better explain why that's in there, because it seems to be rather broad.
Okay. Is that it?
No, it's not it. It looks like I'm going to get about as many answers as I get at
No,
airport.
we'll respond. I mean, is there,
Okay.
is that it on
No,
that
it just
resolution?
continues. It just continues, the same thing. Recusal and abstention shall not be required with respect to any matter which comes before the Warren County Board of Supervisors or standing committee or special committee thereof when a majority of the board's or committee's total membership would otherwise be prohibited from acting by Section 8 of this code, which is like another exclusion. It seems that if the majority has a conflict, then we'll just forget about the fact that there's a conflict. And also, which comes before a municipal officer when the officer would be prohibited from acting by Section 8 of this code, and the matter cannot be lawfully delegated to another person. So I have questions. I'd like Mr. Offerdu to mention why those are appropriate to have in there, that's all.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This local law, as I explained at committee, is formulated in large part after the state model. Those provisions that Mr. Whitehead is referring to are state model provisions. When I looked at this and re-looked at this and re-looked at this, I concluded that it was in your best interest and to try to eliminate issues going forward and to move this process forward, which I think you should and you must, that if you have the state model adopted by Warren County that has been poured over by the State Controller's Office, that is found on the State Controller's website, that you would be assured that you are adopting a policy that is in compliance with Article 18 of the general municipal law. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Go, John.
Motion is needed to bring resolutions 456.
Oh, do we have somebody? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
Dan Freeburn, Town of Horicon. And I'd just like to very briefly kind of make a comment on resolution number 497. I heard that it's not new. If it was adopted in 2011 and going to be renewed, I think it is new. And I heard it is temporary, and I would remind everybody here that the tolls on a thruway were to be temporary. Okay? But my biggest comments are that this is two things. Number one, a minuscule portion of this is going back to the towns, which I think is wrong. But every supervisor that is north of the blue line understands that we have a diminishing and aging population. And the reason for that primarily is meaningful jobs and lack of affordable housing. And this is just one more little tack in this thing that affects those who can afford it the least, and that's young couples who would love to stay and work within the Adirondacks. This should not be continued. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good afternoon, Michael Consulo, Lake George Chamber of Commerce. This might be minor to what you've been going through today, and I realize I might have a conflict, but on Thursday, October 23rd, the Chamber of Commerce is having its annual dinner, and we've been...
Oh, we're just talking on resolutions now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is not public comment.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Any comments on resolutions? Anybody else? Mr. Whitehead?
499, later on, the disclosure forms that you'll be filling out each year. I'd like to read something that from Mr. Friedman of the Committee on Open Government regarding those forms. Consequently, when financial disclosure statements are prepared pursuant to municipal ethics law, they are subject to FOIL. I earlier had tried to obtain the disclosure documents of Mr. Offerdew and was told that they would be delivered to me only in a redacted form. And I'm hoping that the revised forms here would not require such redactions in the future.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might?
Sure.
The forms, I just want to make sure that, so you know, the form hasn't changed. I think Supervisor Monroe brought the point up back in the spring that we have a workable disclosure form. I took that and I took that into my consideration. We're not changing the disclosure form at all. The disclosure form is the same form that we've used since 1990. It'll be the same form that all of you see, and all of the other parties that have to file these forms file on an annual basis. That doesn't change. There's a new form called a private interest disclosure form that it's all well documented in the draft. As far as Mr. Whitehead's comments go, there is very well-sounded reasons to redact information. Mr. Whitehead wants to look at my financial disclosures, ethics disclosures, fine. Mr. Freeman has indicated that those are subject to disclosure. But they're also subject to redaction in certain provisions. I looked at my situation. I didn't look at my situation, just me personally. I was looking at all of you. And I was looking at every single county official here who might be subject to a FOIL disclosure or their ethics disclosure forms. So that's what I had in mind. So if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to say that it's legally permissible to redact something, I would take the same position for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Okay. Now let's vote on resolutions.
Motion is needed to bring resolution numbers 456, 457, and 499 through 503 to the floor.
Motion by Supervisor Monroe. Second. Supervisor Conover. Okay. Vote.
Resolution 456, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vanterlo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
457, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Vansalo?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
That resolution fails. Resolution 458, amending the county budget. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
Resolution 477, authorizing map filing fees for tax map maintenance. Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
No.
Passes. 479, increasing capital project Blair Road over Millbrook. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
480, authorizing the treasurer to transfer funds from computer reserve. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
481, appropriating funds from vehicle reserve to departmental budgets. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
492, extending period of employment for temporary HR assistant. Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Vansalo?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
That resolution fails. Resolution 493, amending the table of organization. Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
497, to enact local law number 5. Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
That passes. Yes, that passes. Resolution 500, amending the county budget. Mr. Westcott?
Did we're on 500,
Yes.
Joan? Okay. Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroh?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
We need a collective.
Collective vote on all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. At this time, I'd like to introduce Maureen Smith, the new Social Services Commissioner. Maureen?
I would just like to take a minute and thank the board for your support. I would also like to comment on what a great staff I have. They're very dedicated to helping people in the county that need our help, and we will continue to go forward. And it's just been wonderful. While we were down, the staff really pitched in, and I wanted all of you to know that. And thank you once again. I'm proud to accept this.
Thank you, Maureen. I know, Mr. Mosher, did you want to address the board?
Sorry for jumping the gun there. As I was saying, I think there might be a conflict for next Thursday, but the annual dinner for the Chamber of Commerce is next Thursday at the Queensberry Hotel. We've been honored and privileged to obtain Gavin Landry as our keynote speaker. Mr. Landry is the head of New York State Division of Tourism, and he's going to be here to speak with us on advertising and marketing relative to the state, but more importantly to Lake George, Warren County, and the Adirondack Park. I know that you have busy schedules, but I hope that you can revisit that day and join Supervisors Kenny, Merlino, Stroh, and possibly Westcott to that evening. And again, it's at 6:30 at the Queensberry Hotel. Thank you.
What time is it, Michael?
6:30 reception, 7 o'clock dinner and presentation. And everybody else here is invited too. Call the chamber for reservations. Thank you.
Mr. Mosher, did you want to address?
My name is Richard Mosier. I represent myself and my mother, Edna Mosier.
Go ahead, speak into the mic so we can.
My name is Richard Mosier. I'm representing myself and Edna Mosier, my mom. We had several properties that was in the foreclosure status, which we had payment plans on. We paid a lot of money. We're down to 2 last pieces of property, which to bring them out of the payment plan is a little over $6,000. We missed the deadline that we had to get those 2. I hold a full-time job and along other things. Something that I completely had forgotten about is I have some stock in Prudential, which will pretty much pay them 2 pieces, bring them out of the foreclosure. And I guess I'm asking for the chance to do that at this time. How else? I mean, I can show you documentation, what else you want to see. We can do this. Like I said, I was scrambling, and I completely overlooked this, or we'd have had it paid before the deadline, trying to come up with other things, pieces of equipment that I had that I was trying to sell and hold a full-time job, take care of the farm, and everything else going on that I completely forgot about to stop. I had that documentation. I'd like the opportunity to be able to pay them so that they don't go in the auction tomorrow.
Okay. Supervisor Vansville.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we remove Mr. Moser's 2 parcels from the auction.
I think we have to waive the rules first, sir. We need a motion to waive the rules in order to discuss this. Motion by...
There needs to be a lot of discussion on
We
this,
will.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Merlino, waive the rules. Do we have a second? Supervisor Dickinson. Now, Supervisor Vansville, what's your discussion? Your resolution?
You got to vote on it. Got to vote on it.
Oh, vote on waiving the rules. All those in favor, waive the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, Mr. Vansville.
My motion is to withdraw the 2 parcels that Richard Mosier is talking about from the auction list for tomorrow.
We have a motion by Supervisor Vansville. Do we have a second by Supervisor Dickinson? Now we're open for discussion. So who wants to open the discussion? Chairman Monroe of the real property.
I've had a lot of contact with Mr. Mosier, and I think everyone knows my position has always been that we try everything possible if taxpayers are trying to save their properties to help them do that. And, I understand that there's administrative convenience involved, and it makes more work for the county attorney's office, it makes more work for the treasurer's office. But, balancing that against the person's property that they've had in the family for many years, especially, I come down in favor of trying to save properties. Mr. Mosier's contacted me numerous times over the last 2 months, I believe. Came to the last chance meeting. Has five properties. If it wasn't for the fact that he had separate installment agreements, we would have to follow the rule that even if he came up with all the money to bail out 4 of them, he would still lose all 5 because we would refuse to accept the money, which to me is totally wrong. So now he's in a position where he has been in touch with me, had several ways that he felt he could come up with the funds to pay this off. One, I believe he's got at least an oral agreement to sell a truck for $20,000. He has timber that is worth a substantial amount of money, and he has stocks which would be enough to pay off an installment agreement on the 2 properties. Yesterday, we had discussions about what would satisfy the treasurer. The treasurer said he was insisting that he would have to have all this money together by 4:30 yesterday, and that instead of the $6,000 to save it from the installment agreement, or to get the installment agreement current, he would have to pay in full something in the neighborhood of $15,000. I conveyed that information to Mr. Mosier. I said I'm about at the limits of what I can accomplish. He said, I would like to speak to the full board. I said, I believe you're entitled to do that. And so I would support the motion with the condition that he sell whatever assets are necessary to bring all the taxes current by March 31st, by after the first quarter next year, because from what he's told me, he has the ability to do that. And if we make that as a condition, we remove this parcel from the sale. If he fails to meet that condition, it can go through the sale.
Okay.
I know that this is not pleasant, and I understand all the concerns of our administrative staff.
Yes. Mr. Attorney?
Make it short.
Oh, no, you're staying now. No.
Thank you. I think what is different here, if I may, is Warren County owns these parcels. I don't know if I can make that any clearer. We have a deed to these parcels that was recorded in the Warren County Clerk's office. I understand the need to try to do everything. In my opinion, I think we have. I'll let Mike and Lexi differ with me. I just think this is not a comfortable situation to be in. I understand that. But please understand, if you do this, not only are we taking these parcels out of the auction, but now my office, who is overtaxed and overstressed, what are you asking me to do? You're asking me to prepare deeds at not his expense, my time, my expense. Now I have to convey those deeds out. I may have to get a court order to do this. I may have to make an application to the court to do this. I'm not sure about that. And I just want you to consider these things. I understand the problem here. Don't get me wrong. I understand it. But there has been ample time here to rectify the situation. And I'm not at all convinced that we have adequate assurances here that these funds are going to be paid. I'm just not at all assured of that. We put an enormous amount of time and effort into these things, and we're proud of the work that we do. We dot our I's, we double dot our I's, we double dot our T's. And if something goes wrong here with this process, something goes wrong through the process, you're not going to look to Mike, you're not going to look to Lexi, you're going to look to me, and you're going to say, Martin, where were you on this? I'm going to be held accountable for this. I understand the position that you're taking. I'm not happy about it, but I understand the position that you're taking. And at this point, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for Mike and Lexi to chime in.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
There's a couple of comments I want to make. First is, if you do this, there will be additional fees that either Martin's office or somebody's office is going to have to, excuse me, I've been sitting too long without talking, that'll have to be paid, which is, because we own the property, it's going to have to come out of our name and go back into Mr. Mosier's. We calculated that with Martin's staff and the clerk's office. That's going to be about $425 per parcel, all right? So if you're going to allow this gentleman to redeem his property, I think that the 425 or 850 collective should be added to that fee, because I don't think that the county taxpayers should be paying that additional fee for us to deed the property back to him. All right, that's the first thing. Secondly, the last day to redeem is July 18th. It's usually somewhere in the middle of July. We had almost 600 people that made that deadline. You know, I think if you talk to them, they might take a little bit exception to the fact that you're allowing one person to blow through that deadline, blow through another deadline, and yet a third deadline, and still be able to get their property back after we've already taken title to it. Okay? Lastly, I will do what the board wishes. Okay? If you wish to let this gentleman, excuse me, enter into some sort of another payment plan or pay off what he's got. But I do need a specific. Are we talking about paying up as an installment, which is a moving target every 3 months that figure changes, or are we talking about paying off completely? Because outside of the installment, there are still 2013 and 2014 taxes that are outstanding. So right now, to pay off the installment, it's about $6,000. To pay off his entire tax debt, it's almost $15,000. Okay? So I need to know the direction, if the board is going to do this, what figure I'm going to be taking.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I just want to emphasize that point that Mike is making. If this is something that you decide to do, and I talked to Mike and to Supervisor Monroe about this, as with any real estate closing, my natural inclination is that you make sure all taxes are paid. All taxes are paid to date. We're being asked, if this goes through, we're conveying back to Mr. Mosier. It's my view that if you're going to do that, you're free to do that. If you're going to do that, consider the need to have all taxes paid up to date, including 13 and 14. Here's why. Here's why. Remember what happens if a taxpayer doesn't pay taxes. The county re-levies. You're out of pocket on that. And we're right back to square one with this. We're right back into a possible foreclosure next year on these properties. So in my view, include what's up to date, and I think that's the responsible thing to do to the taxpayers.
Well, Fred, you and I...
Maybe there's a misunderstanding, because I wasn't suggesting that it be conveyed back to him. What I was suggesting was that we retain title, allow him to pay everything in full by next March, and if he doesn't do it, then it goes to the sale, next sale. So I wasn't suggesting convey it back to him.
Well, yeah, but we have to convey it back to him. If he comes in, if you allow him to come in and pay those taxes, we have to convey it back to him, even if it's March 31st, because the property is in my name right now.
Well,
so my point is that if you're going to allow to do that, we should be collecting additional fees from him to cover the cost to convey that property back to him. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay. Lexi? A liability possibility because of the fact that it is now in the county's name. We have taken title to it. We allow him to continue to use this property. That may put a liability onto the county because it is in our name. Please just keep that in mind. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I know my office, the treasurer's office, and the county attorney's office, we all go above and beyond to try to help these people. I've made numerous phone calls to people. I made everybody aware as a reminder to their September deadline for September 2nd to come in. That was what we gave them at the last chance meeting. I did call the Mosiers and give them that reminder of that second deadline. I did speak to his mother. I've tried his cell phone numerous times and it does not have a voicemail, so I cannot speak to him. But with these parcels, I'm not trying to naysay, but they've been in installment agreements on and off on their property since 1998 that I could see when we did research on them. So this is something that does happen. They do an installment agreement, fall behind, they pay up,
and then they pay off, and then after that 3-year time, they can get back into another installment agreement. If we do not have the Mosers pay the 13 and 14 taxes, there will be, I believe, 3 parcels out of the parcels that he had in there this year will be right back in next year's foreclosure. So if those fees aren't included in this, we'll turn around and we'll be in this process all over again next year for our foreclosure on their properties.
I think my brief discussion with Mr. Mosier yesterday and this morning, just briefly, is that he has to pay the county in full by 30th of March of this year. That he has, I think he has the money to pay off the 2 parcels to bring them, but he has to pay up, get out of the installment plan, pay his 2015 taxes by March of this year, pay everything up and get out of this installment plan, and that's what we talked to him about, and he's agreed. He has showed us a plan where he has agreed to do this. Now, I think there needs to be a written signed agreement. I mean, we're showing a little compassion here, maybe a little bit more than what some of us can do, and I understand the liability of the other people in foreclosure. They could come to us, but Mr. Mosier did produce evidence to us that he could do this, and I know we're on a slippery slope here, and it's nothing against, and I understand, Martin, the amount of work that your department has to go. I understand the treasurer, you're concerned, and Lexi, your concerns are dealing with these things, and we've sat through last chance meetings for 10 years, and, you know, but to me, if we can, and if he can certainly meet what he's agreed to do verbally, and we can get it in writing, the April 1st, if it's not done, the county takes the property.
Okay,
and I don't know how we can do that legally, but
We've already taken the property.
Well, the 2 parcels.
We've already taken both parcels.
But you take the other parcels.
We've already,
Well, those he's paid up, so the other parcels,
I thought he wasn't paid.
he has 2 parcels that are left in, and those ones...
No, paid in full? No back taxes?
No, the other 3 parcels, he just caught up the installment.
That's what I'm saying, but I'm talking, Mike, pay in full.
On everything?
Everything.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Are you aware of what they're asking you? That means all delinquent taxes that you have owed will be paid by April 1st.
That includes September school tax. It's out there right now.
That's out there right
January
now.
15
Well,
county tax, right?
Well, that's
I don't know that this type of an agreement is permissible under Article 11. I'd have to look at that.
Okay. Well,
I'd have to look at that.
At least we were trying, so I don't know. I don't do anything illegal. Supervisor Dixon?
I've spent my life in land transactions. There's nothing more precious, I think, in the United States than own your own property. This is family property. His mom's on one parcel, he's on another. I mean, I have no inclination. I don't care how much paperwork's involved. The guy's trying to get himself out of a hole here. He's asked us for our consideration. I'd like to press on with that and give him every opportunity to redeem himself, keep his mom's property, keep his property, keep his business property. I think we're all boxed in a square here with all the rules and regulations, but I would be hard pressed to continue on with this. I don't see anything here we can't resolve. And I think we need to come to some agreement and give him till April 1st to get himself whole again, and whatever it takes, it takes.
I know, go ahead, Mark.
I agree with that. I just don't really say this a little differently than the way I was going to say it. We don't have a lot of time to figure this out before the end of today, do we?
No.
We need an agreement. That's clear. We need to know that everybody's expectations are clear on this, how much you're willing to sign up to pay. We need to address the liability issue. That's huge, the one that Lexi just brought up. We're going to own the property, and there's other people that are going to be on it and using it. That's a big issue.
Sure.
We got to understand that before we decide to do anything. And all this has to be figured out by the end of today, because we can't I mean, I don't think we can vote today because we don't really know what we're voting on here. We don't know the firm numbers. We don't really know what the agreement is. We don't know what the liability is. But to Supervisor Dickinson's point, I think we need to try to figure it out. So can we kind of pass something that I guess it gives us till 5 o'clock or something to figure this out? Because we're not going to be able to figure out what we're voting on
Well,
right here
if we vote to pull it from the sale, then it goes a year. It could potentially go a year.
I can't vote for that today
Okay.
because it isn't clear what I'm voting on. I don't even know what I'm voting on here. Pull it from the sale, that I understand, but what does it mean in terms of what is the gentleman going to pay, and is there any liability, and all that stuff is not clear.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Westcott, maybe I can address the liability issue this morning to your satisfaction. As I understand the county law, not the real property tax law, but as I understand the county law, as long as the county is not actively engaged in ownership-type activities, we're not running a business there, we're not entering, exiting, et cetera, we're not doing anything that an owner typically does. We are not going to be held liable or accountable for anything that goes wrong on that property.
Okay, all right.
So that's the normal situation. The twist here is that you own the property. It's not that we're going to take ownership. You've already taken ownership of the property. The twist here is that you would be allowing, presumably, occupancy to continue, business operations to continue. That is potentially problematic, as you've identified. Potentially problematic because that's a twist. I think what that statute was designed for was that parcel, which is most of our parcels in these foreclosure proceedings, where nobody's living there, where they're vacant parcels. They've been abandoned, whatever the case may be, and people just give up on them. Here, that's not the case. And here, Mr. Mosier and/or his mother are going to continue to occupy during this time period, and we have to recognize that. Now, I'm willing, I get it, I hear you. I'm willing to look into this. Maybe there's some type of a lease arrangement or something that I can come up with some indemnifications and insurances. I get it. I'll figure it out. I very much appreciate your willingness to try to resolve this by 5. I know my schedule the rest of the day, and I'm not going to be able to devote any time to this for the balance of the day. I'm just not. I'm not going to be able to devote serious time to this by the end of the day. So, you have my pledge. I'll look into this. I'll work with Lexi. I'll work with Mike. I'll protect your interests as best I can. But if your resolve is to allow him, is to pull these from the auction and to continue as we are, that's your resolve. We'll find a way to work within that.
I don't know. Anybody else wish to comment? Supervisor Taylor?
I'd just like an explanation of what the 5 properties are. And when you just say there's 5 properties, is that separate parcels of a working farm? Why couldn't you have sold some of the parcels off in the past to pay for these taxes?
I can tell you what they are.
We can give you
Well, somebody come to the mic. Mike, can you come to the mic, Mike?
One of them is a sawmill-type storage property over in Riparius, which is in the town of Johnsburg. One of them is I don't know if you call it an operating sawmill. I mean, it is a sawmill on the property. I haven't seen anything done in quite a while. There's a storage yard across the street from the sawmill that has a mobile home on it that is unoccupied. There's a barn parcel across the street from which it has is used for, they've got some horses in there, hay storage or whatever. Mrs. Mosier's house, which is across the street from the barn, and behind Mrs. Mosier's house is Mr. Mosier's house, which I don't think you're living in at this point. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'm just trying to be accurate about who's living where. So that's the 5 parcels. But the only 2 that are left on, just so that we're all clear, is the parcel across the street from the mother's house, which has a barn on it, and the parcel that's across the street from the sawmill, which is basically has lumber stored on it and a vacant mobile home.
Supervisor Conover.
All right, just a question for Martin in terms of is the occupancy issue handled by the seller or the purchaser? In other words, we're selling as is.
Correct.
So, as is, where is, does that include occupancy? So that the issue of occupancy will need to be dealt with by the purchaser?
That would be, yeah, that's typically how we handle them. What we have had the situation where properties haven't sold, where we continue to have occupancy, but you do purchase it as is, and that's the way it is. So if there continues to be occupancy, you buy subject to occupancy. The county has the right at this point in time.
Is that specified in the sale, on occupied properties, is that specified in the bid document that
We say as is. We say as is.
I know we don't normally, I guess it's not common, I guess what you were saying before, that there's occupied.
Yeah, let's assume that Joe Smith is the successful bidder tomorrow for these two properties. You're going to approve those sales at your November meeting. The county is going to execute deeds to Mr. Smith. Title will vest in Mr. Smith. At that point in time, theoretically, if occupancy continues, Mr. Smith would have the right to seek evictions of those occupancies. I hope that answers your question.
Go ahead, Brad.
So it seems to me that from everything that's been said is that for the 14 properties that didn't sell last year and for any properties that sell this year, we still have the same liability question between the time of the sale and the time of the deed, and if they don't sell until the next auction, right? The liability.
I'm not aware, I'd have to defer to Lexi and Mike, Supervisor, but I'm not aware that we have occupancy continuing on a majority of the parcels. I know of one parcel, which we've discussed in committee, for which we've commenced an Article 15 proceeding. We expect to prevail in that proceeding, and then we expect to move for removal of that occupant. We have not exercised any ownership interest of that property other than taking the deed in the foreclosure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the total owed, even up to date?
I have a number here of $12,454.72. That's the number that I have.
Okay. Michael? We have Richard, I'm sorry. It's been only half an hour since you've been. You said you have stocks?
I do.
Okay. Can they be liquidated to accommodate that figure?
There's enough stock to take this out of the payment. I'm working every day. My intention was to get it out of the payment. Basically, right away, whatever the time it takes, and cash the stock in. That would take it out of the payment. And then I would be working on the parcel, all of them, to bring in the fair amount of payment.
Yeah. Rachel?
I just have two quick questions before I make a comment. One, how many properties are in the sale for tomorrow, Martin?
35.
35. And were all 35 property owners notified they could come to today's board meeting and appeal to the entire board?
No, they wouldn't have been, Rachel. I'm sorry, Supervisor Sieber, they wouldn't have been. And the reason is that they have received numerous notifications in the past. Some of them, most of them, either we've obtained a judgment against, and all of them we've obtained a judgment against, either by way of default judgment or summary judgment. But they have all received numerous notifications of their rights in these procedures. They were also given the opportunity to appear back in August for the last chance committee meeting. Many of them did. Many of them reached agreements with the committee at that time. Since that time, Supervisor Monroe has had communications with other folks, and we have reached agreements with other folks as a result of that process. The difference here is, again, we reached agreements or understandings with all of those property owners prior to the county taking a judgment and prior to the county taking title. Right now, we have full and complete legal title to Mr. Mosier's parcels.
Two parcels.
Two parcels.
May I just comment back? I'm very sympathetic to this, Richard, absolutely. And, I have a hard time just learning of this today to be able to say that we can do this for you as a board, especially hearing from both our county attorney, our county treasurer, and from Real Property. I'm sympathetic to it, but given the process and the procedures that are in place, and in the idea of really trying to be fair to all, I'm having a rough time being able to make that decision, so I apologize.
Okay, Supervisor.
The point was, were other people told they could come to the board meeting today? I think the answer is no. Mr. Mosher was not told. He made the request that he come to the board today. He asked me if he could come to the board today. I believe he asked the chairman if he could come to the board today, and he asked Supervisor Bandy. And so, knowing that we have a policy that we listen to people when they come here, I told him I thought he could.
Sure.
And I think that was open to anyone, any of these others.
Oh, you make a good point. Yeah, I hear you.
I agree with that.
Supervisor, County Attorney Ducek, or County Administrator Ducek. Oh, my land. Get me
Hey,
some lunch.
I have dealt with my fair share of these too during my tenure. I sat here and I really wasn't going to say anything, but then I'm thinking of it from the administration of the county standpoint and thinking about just the county's well-being. Because I think we got to consider that. There's no question that this county has always taken an approach to bend over backwards to try to save properties for people. We've done that. We do the last chance meeting, that's not required by law. That was something that we developed during my tenure as county attorney, which I'm very happy has continued to this date. We give numerous notices. We do everything we can to save people's properties. And unfortunately, though, there comes a time when the rules are the rules. And when you cross that line and that rule has been followed, which in this case it has, and it's been turned over to the county, we now own that property. And we own those other properties. The concern I have as your county administrator is that if we start making special rules once we own county property, where do we draw that line? How many times do you do this? What is the value of that property? What is the liability that the county incurs during that window? I've got to tell you, as your county administrator, and I know this sounds cold, but I have to recommend against this because the rules are the rules. Everybody else played by the rules. It's an unfortunate situation. We don't like taking the property as a county, but I've got to tell you, as your county administrator, I would be remiss if I didn't comment on this situation and tell you that I really think that the answer to this particular one has to be no at this point. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but you're going to go down, I think, you're going to go down a path that's just going to be just filled with problems if you approve this particular case. And like I say, I think we can all acknowledge this is unfortunate. It's sad. We don't want to do this. But on the other hand, we're following state law. And not only do we follow state law, we also bent over backwards. And this is a case, by the way, that has a long, long history. This isn't something that just happened. This is an unfortunate situation, but I really have to encourage the board to think long and hard on this. And I would encourage you just to let the law take its course of action.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I was not elected to not represent people of Warren County. I was elected to represent them. I don't see any reason why this board can't do this. I don't care if it's not first time ever. I think it's the proper thing to do. And I will remind the rest of the board that the resolution that was on the table right now is simply to withdraw these two parcels from the sale tomorrow. That'll give us some time for all of us to think about this and decide what we should do.
Okay.
I don't think it's imperative that we put this off. I think we need to do it now. I think we need to take it out of the sale and take a step back and look at this. I understand it's complicated. Life is complicated.
All right, let's get on with it.
It's all part of the game.
Supervisor Gerard.
I have no problem taking the property off the sale tomorrow, but I would like Martin to do his diligence and research to see if legally you are on solid ground and that we can proceed. And the other parts that he's talking about, leasing aspects, the liability. And we certainly have time, I think, but I would be in favor of pulling it. And then I would like a legal report on where we are with the parameters at hand, and that would give us more time to digest, the fairness of what we're doing here, because, my involvement, I think this is one of the worst things that we can be put up against. No one wants to see anyone have this happening to them, but We are very fair and try as hard as we can in this vein. And this opens the door for some very bad precedent that might not be legal. So I would be in favor of pulling it and have Martin do his research and report back.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. We want to vote, we'll do a vote, voice vote. To pull the parcels from the sale. 2.
Mr. Westcott?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Wood?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
No.
Mr. Kenny?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Vansalo?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
Passes. 649 passes.
Passed, okay. Any other public comments, please? Anybody wish to comment? Mr. Whitehead?
I just want to thank you for passing that. That sounds, I am proud of you all. Thank you.
Any announcements?
15 years, and I think
Supervisor Sokol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be a lovely day and lovely evening to take a stroll down Aviation Road. We have a benefit that we're holding. It's called the Communities Against Cancer to benefit the C.R. Wood Cancer Center. 50% of the proceeds go to the center, so we hope to see you all there. It's going to be a great night.
Anybody else? Again, thank you to TV8 for focusing. You'll have to bring more film next time. So. Motion to adjourn. Second by Evan. Thank you.